Calls to order. Roll call.
We have Terry Yates, so she can bring it up. Member Wareham.
Here.
Member Sandifer.
Here.
Member Guy.
Here.
Member Capelli.
Here.
Vice Chair's not here. And then Chair Olmsted Owen.
Here I am.
Thank you.
Okay, and Terry, member Sandifer, can you say please move the appointments?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, and we have someone from HDL.
Yes, the finance director, Gina Schuchard, is not here tonight. So I will take a minute to introduce our presenter this evening. Tom Bachman is with HDL Companies. The HDL Companies is a company that the city uses to provide us with special services related to sales tax reports. They help us monitor the sales tax, present us on a quarterly basis management reports. They help us with the forecasting of sales tax receipt. But Tom is here tonight to talk about primarily the difference between the regular sales tax and the transactions tax, which is what Measure R is all about. And most importantly, to explain, hopefully that would, the differences between those two taxes will explain why we project to receive on an annual basis this fiscal year $4.9 million from the transactions tax versus the $7.2 million we expect to receive from the regular sales tax. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Bachman from HDL Companies to lead us in the presentation.
Okay, thank you for having me here. I have to explain, as district taxes or transactions taxes, as they're called, have become more popular, we have lots of inquiries from cities that, well, we want to put a 1% sales or transaction tax on the ballot. It's going to give us the same amount of money.
Yeah, can I have, Brian, could you bring two?
Okay.
Anybody else needing a copy of the presentation? Oh, it's in the, yeah, it's in the packet. That is correct. Yeah, it's in the packet. That's correct.
I didn't have a packet here.
Oh, you just bring yours.
No, I don't usually have them here.
I called and asked, so if you want them, call them.
Yeah, he's got one. Yeah, it's in the packet.
She'll print it out for you, have it ready for you. I ran out of ink and paper.
Yeah,
That's a big
I
bad.
got spoiled last couple of
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there's often an assumption that a 1% transaction tax will generate the same amount of money as a 1% sales tax, or your Bradley Burns, as it's referred to, your basic sales tax. And that's not often the case. It's generally basically because the taxes work different, they're applied differently, and hopefully you can help explain that to you tonight and give you a better understanding of it all. So first thing I thought I'd do is just give you a general breakdown of what the sales tax rate in Norco looks like. And it's made up of a number of different components, and there's a base statewide rate of 7.25%. That's made up of various components. The state general fund gets a little under 4%. Norco, your general fund, or your Bradley Burns, that's your basic 1% sales tax. You get 1% of that. County Public Safety, Prop 172, that was money to backfill the ERAF shift in the early 90s. That's a half cent of it. In 1991 and again in 2011, the state shifted services to the counties. With that, they shifted some of their sales tax. So that 1.565 0.5% of that goes to mental health, and the 1.0625 goes to public safety. And then there's that 0.25% that goes to countywide transportation funds. That makes up the base statewide rate that is applicable in every agency throughout the state. Now, on top of that, in many counties, and again, then drill down a little bit further into local agencies, that rate can be increased. So in Riverside County, there's a transportation, half-cent transportation tax of 0.5%. So the base rate in Riverside County is 7.75%. When Norco's measure went into effect on April 1st, increasing it by 1%, the local rate in the city of Norco is now 8.75%. And we're seeing a lot of that through Riverside County through this whole quarter. We've seen a lot of that, those taxes being added on. So there's a distinct difference between the two taxes as I mentioned initially. The Bradley Burns, which is your base sales tax rate, it's generally allocated to the jurisdiction where the sale is either negotiated or the order is first taken. When you compare that to the Measure R transaction tax, that's allocated to the district where the goods are delivered to or the first place of use. So on the Bradley Burns side, if you have a Norco business that is generating sales, the sales tax is generally going to go here. Under Measure R, you can have a Norco business that generates sales tax that delivers the goods out of the city that the Measure R tax would not apply. Conversely, if goods are shipped into the city from outside agency or another jurisdiction where you normally wouldn't get the Bradley Burns, you would get the Measure R. And I'll explain, in greater detail how these affect your different categories of sales tax.
Could I ask a quick question? So, say a Norco business charges 8.75, which it's supposed to do, and it's delivered to somebody outside of Norco, what happens to that 1%?
Well, if they don't charge it.
Yeah,
Huh?
They don't charge
But
it.
how would they know?
They know based on where they've shipped it because they know how to apply the different taxes.
But maybe a car dealer would know, but, like my daughter, she owns a store on 6th Street, so if she sells something to somebody, say, over the internet, and she is charging a sales tax, and it's delivered to, say, somebody in Pasadena, then what happens?
Right. She should be charging the full 8.75%. Pasadena does have a transaction tax, which is 0.75%. So in that case, it would be charging.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is just
yes,
a lot of businesses just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, which administers sales tax, tries their best to educate the businesses, and when tax rates change, they try to educate. Does it always work? No. And that's kind of why we're in business, because it's I don't want to say it's a deeply flawed system, but there are flaws, and the reality is California sales tax is extremely complicated. You've got these multiple districts with so many different tax rates, and the businesses and their tax preparers have to sort this all out and try to comply with it, and sometimes it's challenging. I mean, one of the things that one of the things we also do for Norco and all our other clients is we provide auditing services to try to determine whether that businesses are applying the tax correctly. Now, when a new transaction tax comes into effect, like Norco's did, we're going to sit there and we're going to look at your Bradley Burns tax, and we have all the data on that. We have the data for about 99% of all agencies within the state, so we have a really good sample of everything that's going on. So we're going to compare your Bradley Burns to your Measure R tax and see if there's any anomalies that stick out that we should try and go out and reach out to the taxpayer or reach out to the state and get that corrected so the money's flowing correctly.
Now, is the Wayfair decision still, is it in effect? So anything we purchase, even though we purchase it through Amazon or whatever, is the 8.75, is that correct?
That's correct, if it comes here. The Wayfair decision is in effect, and that's a good point you bring up. That's fairly new. It was a Supreme Court decision last June that the state implemented via AB 147. In April, the governor signed that bill that essentially implemented the Wayfair decision. It set thresholds as to how much, the minimum level of of sales that a company operating from outside the state would have to hit before they have to report. California's typically been very aggressive in going after out-of-state retailers. Two of the companies in there, Wayfair and Newegg, were two of the main litigants in that case. We're already paying sales tax in California. We think, and you pointed out Amazon, we think one of the biggest gains are going to come from third parties selling on Amazon that previously didn't collect tax. And for those of you who have shopped on Amazon, you may or may not pay sales tax based on whether they're part of the marketplace or they're a third party selling on Amazon, just using Amazon's platform. So this new Wayfair decision said anybody that sells on Amazon, whether you're part of the marketplace or whether you're just a third party selling on Amazon, has to collect and remit the tax. So we think that's, Amazon's, eBay's, the Etsy's of the world is what they call facilitators that are selling for third parties. They're responsible for administering and collecting the tax. And again, they have the software to be able to say, Norco is this, Pasadena is this, Ontario is something different. So, it's going to be a slow rollout, but we think it's ultimately going to lead to more tax dollars that have been escaping collection in the past. This is a breakdown of your sales tax by the what we call major industry groups, and you can see you're heavily weighted into autos. Autos are really affected by the transaction tax versus the Bradley-Burns tax, because autos, it follows where the vehicle is registered, not where the vehicle is sold. We'll talk a little bit more about that lately. Restaurants is your second largest category. State and county pools, those are taxes that don't have a point of sale specifically, so they get allocated into the county where the goods are delivered, and then Norco gets a percentage of the county pool based on their percentage of sales tax in Riverside County as a whole. This is one that we've seen grow quite substantially. 10 years ago, nobody really paid attention to that. But coming out of the recession, when online sales became much more prevalent in how we shop these days, and that's one of the reasons the Wayfair decision was upheld by the Supreme Court, is because we've changed the way we shop. And so a lot of the money is ending up in the pools, and it's your third largest category right now. General consumer goods is another big section, your fuels. And these are, again, just the various groups. And I'll talk about how we go, how the transaction tax compares to the Bradley-Burns as we go through each of these sections. But I wanted to give you just a little bit of an idea of what makes up your sales tax base. But just remember that autos is a third of your sales tax, and that's an important consideration.
Is this administrative cost? It's like $100,000. Is that going to be divvied up and Measure A and Measure R and taken out? You know what I'm saying? Is it going to be allocated a portion of it to Measure R?
So the amount that he's showing here is for the regular 1%. Bradley
and
cost.
is there an additional admin cost for the other?
For Measure R, yes. And the way that works is actually the State Department of California Department of Tax and Fee Administration takes that money from their collections and then sends us the difference.
Okay.
State always gets it.
I know, don't they?
So and these are your top 25 producers, and again, these are going to be impacted just based on the category they're in. So I showed the category that they're in, autos and transportation. Again, these are some of your major producers in that group, and they're all going to be impacted in different ways based on the buying patterns. But to a lesser extent, building and construction. You've got some that are likely shipping goods out of the city and will be impacted by that. The ones on the right side, the Hobby Lobbies, Targets, your grocery stores, your restaurants, your service stations, those are all pretty much one-to-one because it's generally what we call over-the-counter. So you're going to receive a pretty much even with your Bradley-Burns on those. Okay, so the major differences, and let's go by categories. So again, your largest category, which is your automotive category, which includes autos, RVs, boats, trailers. You have a number of new and used auto dealerships. You have RV dealerships. You have trailer companies operating here, and you've got a marine company operating here. So the big difference here is under Bradley-Burns, if you come to Norco and you buy any one of these vehicles, you pay that 1% tax, and that tax goes to the city. Under transaction taxes, Norco residents will pay that tax regardless of where they buy the vehicle. So if you go to Ontario and buy a vehicle, you're going to pay Norco's sales tax rate, which is 8.75, and including the 1% Measure R. You're not going to pay Ontario's rate. Conversely, if somebody from Ontario comes down here and buys at Hamner, buys at one of your dealerships here, they're going to pay the rate where they live. So Ontario does not have a transaction tax, and they're going to pay 7.75%, because that's the tax rate in San Bernardino County. So it follows the place where the resident registers that, or the person registers that vehicle. And that's a big component, because, and that's one of the reasons you're at 69%. We're going to project you about 69% of your Bradley Burns for this, is because you're so heavily weighted into autos that people that buy, there's a lot of people, we believe, buying from out of the city that will not be paying that tax. Building and construction, transaction tax applies to all goods, picked up here. If you go to home, floor and decor, you're going to pay sales tax there. You're also going to pay this if it's picked up here or it's delivered to a Norco residence. Now, if you're a Corona resident and you come to floor and decor and you buy goods here, and if you buy goods over the counter here, you're going to pay it. If you have the goods shipped to your home in Corona, you're not going to pay it. So, and again, when you get into business to business people, if you have goods that are purchased from a Norco business and again delivered outside Norco, it's not going to apply. Business and industry, kind of the same thing. There's a lot of business to business transaction that are one company will ship to another, and it really depends on where the purchaser is located. The same if a Norco business buys from outside of town, they would then pay that transaction tax. General consumer goods, most of them it's going to be over the counter. If you go in and you pick it up there, the one major difference in the example I typically use is furniture. If you go up to Mathis Furniture in Ontario and you buy a living room set and you got a big truck and you put it in the back of your truck and you bring it home, you pick it up there, bring it home, you're not going to pay the transaction tax. But if you have Mathis Brothers deliver it to your home, then you will pay the transaction tax. And the other example is the online sales. Typically, you don't get any money from Amazon because all Amazon money goes into the state and county pools. Under the transaction tax, anything ordered by a Norco residence that is shipped into the city, Amazon will, or you will collect the transaction tax on that. And again, anyone that's purchased from out of town, again, the furniture delivered into Norco will pay the transaction tax will apply. State and county pools, we talked about how big that was. On the Bradley Burns side, there is no pools for a transaction tax. All that money is directly applied. The type of transactions that would generally show up in the state and county pools typically will show up in general consumer goods and business and industry, with a little bit into building and construction. And then your final groups, your restaurants and hotels, your fuel and service stations, your food and drugs, those are generally over the counter, and they'll generate about the same amount. And mostly we'll see it range from 99 to 101. There's very small variance there, but it's generally 100% same as the Bradley Burns. And so as Amy had mentioned previously, our projection is 7.189 for the Bradley Burns. We have projected the Measure R to come in at 69% at about 4.9 million. I think in the budget they went a little bit more conservative. That's probably a good thing. We have a model that we use to project this, and we look at population, income levels, types of businesses. Is this a business that ships out of town generally? We look at all that, but we also don't know until we have data. We have no data on how your businesses are how they're going to operate. So once we get a year in, then it gets pretty consistent, and we'll know for sure. But this is our best estimate at this point in time. So I hope that's been helpful as far as explaining some of this. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
You said other cities have a similar tax and transaction tax as what we have. Is that 69% somewhat the same as
No, it's going to vary. And again, just because you're relative to your population, you have a large a large amount of auto dealerships is in your sales tax. Some we see 1-to-1, some we see a little bit higher. It really just depends on the makeup of your sales tax within the city. So, and that's, we would try to find another, part of what our analysis is we try to find a city as similar as possible to determine, okay, is our methodology right here? And do we have something to kind of compare it to?
My guess on that is that we are on the low side compared to most cities, and the reason for that is this heavy concentration on automobile sales. And he said 34%, 32%. In some years, that is as high as 36%. And based on our discussions with the auto dealers, a lot of the buyers that actually come in here to buy vehicles are out-of-town people that don't pay that sales tax, that transactions tax. So my guess is, compared to many cities, because of that high concentration, we're probably our ratio is probably on the low side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We didn't have any questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I forgot to ask her.
No, you're fine. You're done. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate that.
Okay, now we're going to move on to our business items, and first, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Or do we have any corrections?
Make a motion to approve.
Here's the problem, you weren't here,
Part of
so,
that?
yeah, so I don't think that, sorry.
No worries.
I make a motion to approve minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, do you have to do a roll?
We'll go
I,
Member Yates. Aye.
So no abstain.
Member Wareham.
Aye.
Member Sandifer.
Yeah.
Member Guy. Member Capelli.
Abstain.
Chair Olmsted Bowman.
aye.
Vote passes unanimous.
Okay, so we're going to have a staff report presentation.
I'll make some comments, and then we'll see how you want to proceed with this. So the purpose of this agenda item here is to reconfirm the committee's discussions and votes over the last 4 meetings. This provides you an opportunity to re-review any of your previous discussions, ask staff questions, and revisit any of your previous votes. I had a discussion with the city attorney in terms of if you wanted to revisit any of your previous votes, how would that happen? And essentially, even though this is a Brown Act committee, he stated that the Robert's Rules of Order does not strictly apply. In what would need to happen for you to revisit any of the items you previously acted upon is a majority of you are agreeing to do so. Okay? I just want you to keep that in mind. After you have reconfirmed your decisions, a report on your recommendations, including supporting documents, will be transmitted to the City Council at the earliest meeting possible to make their final decisions on these items. I want to remind members of the COC that the report that will go to the City Council is structured to be a report coming from you. Obviously, you will be working with staff in terms of making a presentation to the City Council regarding your recommendations. To facilitate your discussion this evening, We have created a staff report that provides a summary of all the projects and public safety funding that you have previously voted on. Attached to the staff report are all staff presentations in committees approved minutes. The staff report and related documents, they are in your packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to review those. Again, I'm not planning to make a representation of the items that have been previously presented to you, but what we would instead be doing is, if there are any items that you want staff to answer questions, that you seek clarifications upon, then staff will be, we are here to do that. And otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can determine how you want to proceed.
Okay. I personally, my opinion is that we should go through each and every one of these, to discuss them and decide whether we want to confirm them or rescind them for recommendations to the city council. One of the things I wanted, can you please bring up the articulated question and ballot question? Because one of the things, it was Nancy Bragan's, I believe. Yes, Nancy Bragan's last meeting said, we advised us that we should perhaps have a mission statement. And I think that the ballot really was our mission statement. It was,
You get presentations from private people.
Up here, right here.
Your control. Okay, now that one?
That's all we have.
No, that's not it.
It's in our packet.
Okay.
It's in your original.
It's in this packet, this one.
Yeah.
Our-
So
it's in this packet.
the entire thing is in the packet.
So can I read it then? We don't have it? It says to keep Norco, to continue protecting Norco's unique animal keeping, open space, large lot lifestyle, avoid further deterioration of infrastructure, continue restoring and maintaining local streets, trails, public facilities, equestrian amenities and parks, and to prevent additional cuts to police, fire, and emergency medical services. Shall the city of Norco adopt a locally controlled 1-cent sales tax generating approximately $4.5 million annually until ended by voters, requiring independent audits in the Citizens Oversight Committee. So, number one and number two, I want to, can I just discuss and then ask for questions like that?
Right, I think.
And can we do it these, each item at a time and then have discussion, public comments, and then see what, just like we would a regular meeting?
Okay.
For, if we have 12 items.
Again, these are actions that you've previously taken as a committee. Again, if there are any of the items you want to revisit for the purposes of reconsidering your previous votes on this, you need to get a consensus to do that.
Okay, so do we want to revisit our previous recommendations?
In general?
Or do you want specific ones?
Do you want to discuss each one and then we can make a motion to address it if we need to address that item, if anyone feels that we need to?
That's kind of not what you would just say. We have to all agree that we're going to look at these instead of doing it as a package. So can we do it like a consent agenda where we say, let's do 4 through 12, pass them, and then we want to look through 1 through 4 maybe?
Yeah, you can select any of the items in there to discuss if that's what you want.
Okay, I would personally, 1 through 3, like to bring those back to the table for discussion and review. And 4 through 12, I'm in agreement with. Anybody else?
So are you making a motion?
I guess I am making a motion.
You just need a consensus, right? You don't
Yes.
have to make the motion, just consensus. We don't have to make the motion.
Oh, okay.
I consent that we.
We gotta have a
one, two,
majority
three.
of them.
I agree.
Disagree.
So we're going to, you want to revisit 1 through 3 and do nothing.
Nothing on the other 8. No, 9.
4 through 12 would continue.
I guess for me, I.
1 through 3, you want to have more discussion, I believe.
Right. I'm interested in motion number 3. If the rest of the committee wants to look at 1 and 2 as well, that's fine with me, but, item number 3 for sure, from my perspective.
Maybe you should take it one at a time. You know, instead of saying 1 to 3, take 1. And if you have a consensus to revisit that item, you can discuss it and then take a new vote on that item.
Okay, that's fine. Number 1, does anybody want to revisit number 1?
Just raise your hand.
Can
That'll probably be
you
easier.
mention what it is?
Oh, sure, it's a dedicated traffic deputy for 344,800. I do.
Yeah.
So 2 are yes, and then,
So that's going to go forward.
Well,
that will not.
No, did you
that's
have a
not
decision? Did you not want to visit it?
I'm just ambivalent.
Huh?
Said I'm ambivalent on this.
Okay.
Because there was, okay, so for number 1.
I mean, if there's further information, et cetera, then I guess I would support
Discussion on it?
discussion, but
Susan, do you want to start with 3? It might be easier, because there's for sure something to discuss with. Is that a possibility?
Sure. But, well, we would have a 50-50 vote anyway.
No, because number 3 is different.
No, I'm talking about it. We do, if member guy says yes to this, number 1, we have a 50-50 vote anyway. So, okay, let's start with number 3.
for discussion.
For discussion.
sure. Discussion.
Okay.
4 or 5. So that's the majority of that one to be discussed.
Again, could we hear what those are? Because
I'm sorry.
we have no clue.
Yeah, so item number 3 is a proposal to fund from Measure R, the FY 2019-2020 public safety cost increase. In other words, what this does is provide funding that will go to the general fund to fund the difference in cost between public safety for FY 2018-19 versus FY 2019-2020. The estimated increase for that fiscal year from 2018-19 to 2019-2020 is $744,357.
So discussion?
Yes.
So I believe in the beginning, this was one of the first ones we talked about, the committee discussed that if the fiscal year budget 1920 by the council was not going to include this or able to include this, then we would vote to have it out of Measure R money as it goes with our mission statement or the ballot measure stating that to not decrease or stop public safety from decreasing. So obviously this money was not funded by the city council in the FY 1920 budget, so funds need to come from Measure R as we discussed.
Clarification, the city general fund budget includes this cost.
So it was funded.
So then,
Yeah, let me remind you though that the city's general fund budget was not balanced. Okay, there is a projected deficit in that fund of about $750,000. But having said that, okay, in the interest of full disclosure, the cost increases are in the budget that the city council has approved.
So they approved a non-balanced budget,
Yeah.
and it's a deficit of 750, and we're looking at 744. Coincidence?
Correct. And we had a discussion, the meeting that with the finance director, and she had, and Andy can confirm this, that their revenue estimates are so extremely conservative that chances are it's going to be a break-even budget. It's going to be a balanced budget without these funds. So my recommendation is that we take this out, because we could spend it on more infrastructure, which is really what Measure R was for, and maintain, my guess is we're gonna approve to increase police anyway, but we would then maintain. And remember, we only had 4.5 million, this is also, now where they're saying 4.9 million. So my position is, if they don't have a balanced budget at year end, because we had $1 million surplus at the end of this 18-19. If we don't have a balanced budget, they can come back to us and say, look, you have a surplus in Measure R, can you balance our budget? So I think that asking for it at the beginning of the year is maybe a little, and before we had all the information on the surplus and on the actual budget, was a little putting the cart before the horse. And so that's why I'm asking a reconsideration on this and to rescind this recommendation.
So how about we hold, and it has two different numbers here, 744, 357, 257, I don't know if that's it.
I'm sorry.
It has two different numbers in the staff report. One line is 744, 357, and one is 744, 257. But my question is, how about we just hold funding that and wait until the mid-year,
Right.
and let's not allocate it to some other infrastructure like you mentioned. You mentioned let's allocate to other infrastructure. How about we hold and not even do that? Let's.
No, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, but our recommendation, so I want to rescind this recommendation, bring it back along with other, Brian's going to be bringing back.
Right, I'm saying not bring it back for anything. Let's just hold it in the account and let's see the mid-year budget. Maybe Measure R funds are extremely low. Maybe Measure R funds are going to be high.
Right, because we don't know right now.
Right, so instead of already taking this out of here.
Look at it.
I agree with
Yeah.
Vincent on that. I think, if it is in the regular budget, and then if there's a problem when we get to mid-year, we'll be made aware of it. But at the same time, I don't think we should be committing these funds, because we may have to use them, in fact, to make up that shortfall.
I think it's also important to kind of go back to the presentation that we had, where it seems to be somewhat of a, I'm not going to say standard process, but happen more frequently than not, that a budget is adopted that is out of balance, because we do hold the revenue at a conservative estimate until it comes in. Because if you looked at last year, they did that and came in $1 million over.
And they said
Over,
2 million.
not just to get them to equal, but they were over the actual expense, the covering of the expenditures that they needed.
And that's great. So that's positive for us.
It is, but that's the standard practice. So you're looking at it being conservative, and then an extra conservativeness of needing this additional 700,000.
I just think we're brand new, and that automatically say no to this public safety cost because it was funded in, and we know it's all numbers and chugging and just make it all look pretty, in my opinion. But so I don't see what's wrong with waiting. I'm okay with pulling it from now, but not automatically push. No offense to you, I know you got important things, but I automatically push it to another, and then it's gone. Then we come mid-year and we're like, well, you know what? We're actually $1 million short. We spend all the stuff. All the projects are funded. Now what are we going to do? We're going to cut a deputy? We're going to cut a car? Or do something?
But what we're saying is that hasn't happened in 5 years. Like, that's not the standard practice of the city. So in most of our cases,
Let me comment to that, Tara. I think the notion that the budget is prepared with extreme conservatism, I don't buy that. That's not. When we project revenues in the budget, they are based on factors that we believe to be correct. Now, a lot of the revenues that we get that leads to extra at the end of the year are one-time revenues that nobody anticipated. Okay? Just, they're not ongoing revenues like your sales tax, your franchise fees, and all of these things. And yes, the last 5 years have been unique. As you know, the economic expansion has been what it is over the last 5 years. But prior to that, we had a year where revenues came up short $3 million. So that it doesn't turn it into a standard practice. So I think this is what you're seeing across everywhere, across many cities, across the state, where the actual revenue, projected revenues at the beginning of the budget process, everybody's seeing some surprises. But I wouldn't because of that. And I'm not saying that that may not repeat this current fiscal year, but I don't want to establish that as a standard practice so that every year there is this expectation that revenues will substantially exceed initial projections.
So my major fear is, as I read this, okay, is that we are going to take this $744,000, we're going to put it into the general fund. Then the general fund's going to have a surplus, which is now we've converted Measure R money that was supposed to go to these things into general fund money, and now it goes into the reserve. I don't have a problem with a reserve. And, you know, we do, right now we have a 60% reserve, and which is healthy. And I'm, you know, what I'm really opposed to is seeing these funds converted to general funds without a need.
I'm with you. That's what I'm saying. I agree. I think it was one of the first things we did. I mean, we should hold off on that, but I'm just saying with that, let's not
Right, and
immediately throw it into some other infrastructure right away. Let's hold it and see mid-year. We can still spend it. I'm sure Brian can come
Right,
up with a lot.
and you were, one of the things is that the meeting you did miss, Brian did have some projects that he's gonna bring back mid-year also. So we're looking at other things, is what we're gonna, because we don't, right now, we really don't know how much money we're gonna have. We haven't even received it to spend it. So I agree with you, and I 100% agree with you that mid-year is a better time to look at distributing those funds.
I think a good question would have been for the gentleman that spoke, how often is he right on the money in the last however many cities they've done this? Not you. Have they been right on the money on the amount the first, second, and third years, or have they been short, they've been ahead?
You know what, I'm the director of finance for a service district, and we have the same problem. Okay, I went, we have to project conservatively because 1974, 1993, 2008, and you know, you just don't know what's going to happen, and it's scary when you're a finance director to not be able to make payroll or not be able to, you know, do projects. So I get it, I get the whole thing, but what I'm saying is, and I'm public safety, you know, is funded. We're not taking money away from them, and we can give it back if there is a need.
So do you want a motion?
Are you in favor of reserving the entire amount?
Yes.
Yes.
Anything has to do with
I think that we're holding back Measure R resources at an extreme amount when there is a general fund reserve that can cover this first year if we oopsie-daisy it and we're wrong. So the comment about would we have to cancel or would we have to reduce services, that's not even a possibility, because the general fund reserve that's there is healthy enough. It has 60% of the general fund. So
you're saying that if Measure R stuff that we've allocated comes short on that from general fund?
no, I'm
Fund
saying
balance?
that if we reserve this full $700,000 and instead of doing other things that we could do in our city this year, now, because it's going to take a long time. If we wait another, mid-year, so we wait another 4 to 6 months, then that money is not actually doing anything in our city for another 3 or 4
Well,
or
it's not
5 or
going
6
anything
months.
yet, right? So,
I'm sorry.
Well, I think,
I mean,
Yeah, no, so.
so what if Measure R is short $1 million or the projection's wrong? And here we've already allocated, we've already got POs, we've already got stuff going.
The
Money's coming
projection
out.
just gained.
I understand,
More
but
from-
we're new. Let's not.
We're $2 million from actually allocating even close to the projection.
I don't think 4
Our
months is
total
gonna,
amount of
5
money-
months is gonna hurt anything. It's my opinion. I don't think 4 or 5 months is gonna hurt anything. We can get projects done and we can see instead of automatically. That's just my opinion. I'm one of them.
Reserving public safety money as if, but your comment, just to finish that up, your comment was that if we don't hold this money back now, that there's actually the potential that we would not have enough funding to pay for our current level of public safety. If we were totally wrong and.
That was my question,
we didn't
wasn't
have-
my statement. That was a question. And I was
Okay,
told it was
so what I
funded.
heard was that that was the statement, and I'm just reminding everyone that we do have this healthy general fund revenue, so that, I'm sorry, reserve, that if we did have this situation, which pretty much, we're still in an incredible, we're not even looking at allocating 60-70% of even the money that they're projecting is the total amount. If you look at our total amount that we're allocating right now, it's not even close to the 6.9 million they're projecting.
But not 60%. If you look-
4.9
The
plus
fiscal
the-
impact, if you look, turn on the last page of the report, that's where that is addressed. Where we say that, all in all, if you include the amount where from last fiscal year and the amount from this fiscal year, a total of $6,076,000.
Yes, but the original amount that we were told and given projects for was 5.5. So we already have an additional 500,000 in the projection set aside from the original amount that we were told.
No, the
And
total-
then we didn't allocate all the Riley Gym stuff.
Yes, the total amount based on what has been approved so far for expenditures is a total of $5,328,000. Also in that slide. Then that is if you take a look at the,
Okay, so you're saying 6,076,000, right?
5.1.
that's 5.1, but then also one that costs on Measure R. That is outlined in the fiscal impact, including the implementation of Measure R by the state is estimated to be around 75,000. We hired a consultant to do the review process and do the screening process. We have actual costs on that, it's 6,000. So those two combined is 181,000. So the 5.1 million plus the 181,000 is 5.328 million.
Yes.
How did you go from 6 million and have $180,000 worth of expenditures and get to 5.3? I missed that.
The 6 million is the projected revenues.
Uh-huh. And you said we have $181,000 worth of projected expenditures just to
And the
administer the.
5.1 million that you have listed on page 2 of
Okay.
Okay.
Which is 700,000 in the bank.
Not if
allocated
you
yet.
hold it in a balance, yes.
I mean, so $700, 700,000 we haven't allocated yet and measure our projected funds, correct? So if we held this other 744, it'd be another 744. I make a motion.
It's like $1 million that's still sitting there.
Million we don't have yet, but $1 million that we're hoping.
Right, so.
1
that-
through 3.
We have
That,
$1 million plus the 744.
No,
no, if we take, okay, if we have $6,076,000 and we take out this 744 and approve everything else, we're still sitting at $1 million at mid-year to reallocate or to
give or take.
come in.
1.3
That's
something.
right, at least.
1.3 something.
Yes.
I think
So isn't that what we're talking about here?
I agree.
Okay. All right.
So I make a motion that the committee, unless there's more discussion.
Wait. One moment, please. Member Wareham, Hank, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
No, I didn't.
Member Zuckerberg? Okay. Member Guy?
No?
Okay, now,
I make a motion that the committee.
Point of clarification, if I can, you have not gotten the public cards on this, so no motion would be appropriate, I don't believe.
do we want to do public comment first, or do we want to?
Sure, you wanna, since you're revisiting that item and you're discussing it, you should take any
Okay,
any
does anyone
questions?
want to speak
We have
on this?
public comment cards.
Yeah, but if it pertains to this one, does
Exactly.
anyone want to
This is
speak
to
on what
retain-
they're talking about?
3.
Okay, this is number 3, fiscal year 2019-20 public safety cost increase allocation of 744,000, or it would be a contribution to the general fund of $744,357.
Is that what
Or
these
just,
No, which one
comments are gonna be about?
Yes.
Number 3?
Yes.
number 3.
Oh, so you're
Okay.
taking
Yeah.
comments on each one?
Yes.
I don't know when did they just.
Okay, because we only
We
put
don't
one
have
card
enough
in
cards
for
out
all
there.
three.
Oh, you know they put it in one?
Yeah, you can-
Well, they
Okay.
put it on item 2.
Show of hands.
So,
everybody
yeah,
has to
not
come on
two.
this.
Okay, does anybody, who wants to talk on number 3? Okay.
Okay, but are we
Non-agenda
restricting it to this item 3 on?
Yes,
On
this is
this
on,
item, on
this is
agenda,
under one
okay.
discussion right now, which is item number 3.
Okay.
Which
I
is,
don't know, she's got a call in the month of this.
the contribution of $744,357 to the general fund.
Okay, Bill Naylor, just so
Yeah,
it's
right.
clarification, I will be speaking on a couple of your items on this agenda item, but we did put in one card because that was all that was asked for. First of all, I would like to say in general that you guys have done an outstanding job with looking over staff's recommendations and have made some really good comments. I do concur with several of you that this particular funding probably does not belong in this Measure R budget at this point in time because, again, the City Council, through their budget system, it looks like they're going to be able to cover that cost. So, and that was the only real reason that it was presented to you to begin with. And even if you approved everything on your list, I believe that you're still going to be close to $1 million in reserve in Measure R. And my recommendation is, on this item number 3, is to withdraw it at this time. I have no problem. If you really need to revisit it later in the year, you can do so. But I don't, you've got more than enough reserve, plus the city's got their own reserve, that you don't need to actually put it in the pile and say, hey, don't touch this, it's good. We need it. That's my own personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Dixon?
Is she calling my
Go ahead, Linda.
name? We're just willy-nilly.
It's a
Okay,
committee meeting.
yeah. All right. Okay, guys, this is not Christmas in July. I don't think that your Measure R funds should have anything to do with the general fund. We're not here to backfill the general fund at all. Measure R fund is a separate fund, and I think you need to go back. I think you need to read what the voters voted for this. This is pretty serious, because if you don't do it right, and I said it at the first meeting, we'll never get anything else passed in this town. I think that the fact that all of a sudden all the money is going to be there, hopefully, and all the wish list has come down, and it's just like Christmas in July. Let's do it. Let's just do it. Let's just spend. I think you need to go back. I think you need to really, I think you got started on the wrong foot, first of all, because you did not get the background. You did not get all the information in the beginning. And I think you need to just step back and really think about what you're approving here, because there's a lot that does not fall under the Measure R categories. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm going to hold my tongue.
Teresa. Hi, my name is Teresa Edwards. I'm on the Historic Preservation Committee. I'm sorry that I missed the first few meetings, but I have been watching them online and trying to make some sense out of the minutes. It was brought to my attention that this came up in the people wanting to backfill the general fund with the Measure R money. Absolutely not. That's not part of the deal. That's why I'm here, that's why I'm involved tonight, because this is what I saw starting to happen, and I just think it's just outrageous that it would even be brought up. I think last meeting, but from what I saw on the video, the City of Cali spent a lot of time going through the budget and discussing the general fund and all that, and I didn't understand why, because it doesn't really have anything to do with what you're supposed to be doing here. It just complicates the matter. It was also brought to my attention that you guys voted on something when you didn't have all the information, and that you were surprised after you got the full information, and to me that raises a red flag. I hope that this process is transparent. There is a thing called lying through omission, and I don't want to see any of that. I think that if there's one thing that happens in here that's any type of a betrayal or deceit, we're going to raise hell. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Now, motion.
Well, my motion is to withdraw section, our recommendation number 3 of the staff report to City Council of $744,357, the public safety cost increase at this time of Measure Our funds.
Okay. Do I have a second? Do you have to do a roll now? Okay.
This is. Committee Member Yates?
Aye.
Committee Member Wareham?
Aye.
Committee Member Sanford?
Aye.
Committee Member Guy? Committee Member Capelli?
Aye.
Chair Olmsted Bowen?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes unanimous to remove this.
Madam Chair, if I could make some comments. I think there have been some comments made here tonight that at best are not very accurate. I think I'm not going to speak about your desire to withhold funding for the increase in public safety cost. I think that's your decision, and I'm not second guessing whether it's right or wrong. But what I want to address is the whole notion that Measure R was passed not to include general fund or public safety. Okay, we did a lot of public education in the process, did a lot of community meetings. The main purpose of Measure R is infrastructure and public safety, and clearly addressing the cost increases related to public safety and or to add additional public safety officers are not costs that are outside of the scope of Measure R. So if you view it that way, you have a misunderstanding of what Measure R is all about. I just want to put that in the record so that it's clear that folks understand what Measure R is all about and not misconstrue it as by default. If you say it's not for general fund, you're saying it's not intended to fund for public safety. It's clearly one of the objectives of Measure R.
Excuse me.
Can't do it. Okay, so that's, does anybody want to call any other items up for review?
Yes.
Okay,
I'd like to call items 1 and 2.
can we do this together, because they were actually.
You can do them separately or you can do them combined.
Okay, let's do them separately.
Okay. My recollection
So
is,
this is item sorry. Item number 1 is the dedicated traffic deputy for $344,800. So it would increase our sheriffs by 1 deputy. And I just want to say that I'm not opposed to increasing our deputies. My issue with this item, and you can speak out, is that I'm not sure we didn't overstep our authority in approving this, because this should be a council decision, not a Measure R decision, in my opinion. So who wants to bring, so we have to vote on this to bring this forward, is that correct? We have to,
Majority.
okay, so what if we have, so you want to bring it forward, I want to bring it forward?
Yes.
Nobody, you want to bring it forward? So we have a 50-50 vote.
So you 50-50 vote to move it forward, and there are 50% not to move it forward. So by default, because you've already acted on that before, I would think it stays, it carries.
Okay. And then, so I guess council's gonna have to decide whether they want to add the two officers.
If I can make another point of clarification, since you had this as an item number 2 collectively, not broken out, again, like on a consent calendar, if the public has any comments on any of those other items, which I think we have people here in the audience who would like to speak on those items, you don't have to vote on them, but you should have to at least hear what the public says.
Okay, so do we have any cards to speak on those items?
We have cards to speak for the whole item number 2. So if anybody wants to speak on this item number 1 that you just discussed.
Or 1 and 2, it's
Yeah.
One question on the clarification. We just decided not to open it, so we have to have public comment on action. we're not
Because the way you're doing it, since you're breaking these all out, yes, we have to now.
Okay. We just decided
Yeah,
not
if
to.
they're not opening it, the decision they've made before stands, I don't think there is any public comments to be taken on that.
But they were allowed to make public comment on the full item number 2, and item number 2 included all 12, and they were able to make comments regardless if it had passed, for to be discussed or not.
So we can
So they should be
Change the agenda on us.
Yes, you're
Okay.
changing the way, so they are
Okay,
allowed to
so
speak.
let's let it speak.
And right now, the 4 cards that I have, does Bill Naylor, do you want to speak on this?
Bill, you're limited to 1 minute.
Okay, I think I can just do that real quickly. I really think you need to reconsider items since we're restricting it only number 1 now, I think you really need to reconsider it and discuss it. Again, I think it's outside the original ballpark, and I think, if I recall correctly, you ended up voting on it before you had the input back from the Sheriff's Department indicating that they weren't requesting any additional officers. It came from the committee here to add that officer, and we hadn't even had 1 full year of the new officer that they just hired for traffic as it was, and he's doing a pretty good job right now. I don't know that we need a second one yet. We might eventually, but not right now. Thank you.
Now, Teresa, did you want to speak on this?
I'm gonna,
If you're not prepared, then that's fine.
Okay. Linda, did you want to speak on this?
Oh, absolutely.
Kareem?
We still have 2 motorcycle officers.
Hello. I'm just going to speak on because it was 2, I already wrapped my comments around the whole shebang. So, and part of why I came to talk today, besides the whole item 2 and all of the different approvals, disapprovals, however you guys move forward, there has been a number of questions, and Cheryl Stedbow brought this up at the last meeting. I wasn't here, I was out of town. But I've seen a lot on Facebook, and it goes to how you address all of these items now and all of these future items that will come to you. And that's a lot of comments that go to staff versus commissions and commissioners. And the first day I came, you guys had a really lot of information thrown at you at all one time. But I had made a couple of statements regarding staff and commissioners because it has come up a lot. And there are a lot of accusations out there that staff is bringing you things that maybe commissioners don't care about or want or know about. So I just want to put my little commissioner hat on. I am from Parks and Recreation. And I had also, at the first meeting, talked to a couple of people that are back here from Streets and Trails, commissioners. You see a lot of us at these meetings. And they concurred with what I already know myself, but from Parks and Recreation, all of these projects have already been discussed at Parks and Recreation. They worked with staff. We had a minimum of 2 meetings just on Measure R projects to decide what would be moved forward. And these are projects that are not just 2 meetings, but I've been on commission a while. These are projects that have needed to be done for years, that have been held in wait for years. These are projects that are needed, necessary, there are safety concerns. So when projects are brought forward to you, and the same thing happened with streets and trails, all of these projects were discussed at commission for streets and trails before they were brought to you. And that is always going to happen. These items come back to us, we get to discuss them again and see what was approved, what wasn't approved, then what is the next project that we can move forward. And as things in the past, as things have not gotten done, they go to emergency funding. They go to council, we beg them for money for something that is a serious concern, generally a safety issue, and they always come forward. You hear about budget shortfalls. A lot of times those are safety concerns. Those are things that get funded with the reserves that we have, and they're not willy-nilly expenditures that we're just blowing money just to spend extra money, or to have a shortfall just because, we didn't know how to work with money in the first place as a city. But so Measure R was brought forward to fund necessary, needed things. And as the Chair Olmsted Bowen read earlier, rereading the measure, the words prevent cuts, prevent loss, prevent closure, retain the things that we already have that are in dire need of being maintained, being fixed, or not being closed. Not adding new things. I know that there are needs and wants out in the community, and as commissioners and staff, we have to balance those needs and wants. And a lot of times we get the need, we don't get the want. You're not getting the pool. Sorry. That's, people come, and I'm sure you guys get emails and comments all the time on what you guys should be doing with Measure R money. I get comments all the time how what a terrible commissioner I am because we don't have a pool. I'm sorry, we don't have the money as a city. We don't have the money to fund new things. New police officers when we just got one. New community service officers. Do we need them? Not necessarily. Do we want them? Every day. I'll take all of them. I'll take extra every day. But right now we need to fund the budget of things that are super necessary, the things that we really need and need to fix and maintain, and that's what Measure R was for. Can we backfill the budget? Absolutely. If it were going to come down to cutting police officers, saving that money for later and utilizing it, absolutely, because we don't want to cut a police officer. We don't want to cut a paramedic. We don't want to cut fire. So those are things that can absolutely be held in weight. You guys had a lot thrown at you at one time. I went and talked to staff. You've had a lot of time to revisit some things, go over them a little bit slowly, ask for clarification. That's your job. As a commissioner, I might say, yep, this is what I want. But if it's going to Measure R money, it's your job to check those numbers. It's your job to check all of that stuff and say, you know what? I think maybe what you needed and what I'm hearing is needed is different. And that's fine. As commissioners, we don't all agree, and you guys are not all going to agree. And you're not all going to agree with every resident out there, and they're not all going to like you. And that's just too bad, because I got friends, but other people like me. I don't need everybody to like me. But I just want you to know and be aware that commissioners are involved in this process. And staff doesn't bring you stuff just willy-nilly, things that they want or that they think are special. They listen to the community, they listen to their commissioners, and they're bringing you what is really absolutely needed at this time. And maybe in 5 years, those wants will happen. But right now, we have a lot of needs that we need to cover first. So thank you. I really enjoyed reading over the minutes and watching a couple of videos, the meetings that I missed. I think you guys are doing a great job. It's not easy, and it's not ever going to be easy. So it's okay. We'll make some decisions, and the rest of us will survive. Thank you.
Good evening. Again, pretty much what Linda had to say, but it covers it. Measure R, here, we talked before, this first year, you gotta give the public some bang for their buck. They gotta be able to see. And I did not support Measure R. because I wanted it earmarked for streets, trails, and infrastructure. I was afraid exactly what was going to happen. It's happening. They want more cops. They want more. Agree with public safety, not losing anything, but Measure R is the reason I didn't support it, because I wanted it for infrastructure, not for stuff we don't have. If you're going to save $1 million because you don't know what to do with it, fix the pool. Thank you.
That's a want.
I have no more speaker cards.
It's more than
Yeah. What's that?
You said it all. You did great.
Yeah, absolutely.
No more speakers? Madam Chair? Madam Chair, I have a comment. You go.
I have a comment, question. Regarding voting protocol, okay, we had a motion, we voted it was 50-50. Does not the chair take the deciding vote?
She's already voted, so.
Because we're missing a person.
I understand that.
And as I'm reading, just like as Andy had said, is that since this was something that had already been approved, and the majority did not find to pull it, then it stays as not to be discussed this evening.
Okay, so we're going to, and remember, here, I
I have
just
a comment,
want
Madam Chair,
to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
about some of the comments here. We can
Okay.
comment on it, right?
Certainly.
So, I too read a little bit about Measure R and want to know what it was for, and before I voted yes or no on it when it came up. And I agree, I love Norco's, the way we live here and what it is, and we need to fix the things that are falling apart that we've already had. I do agree with that, and I would fight for that 100% like I have. But being boots on the ground for public safety for 30 years, and the lieutenant can agree or disagree with me, most people in every area in the United States don't care about police and fire until they need them. And they don't know they need them. They love fire departments until we say we need to build one next to your house, and then there's protests. Same with police officers and cop cars, stuff like that. We don't have the same amount of police and fires we had, I don't know how many years ago, 5, 10 years ago. So we're low on that. So us trying to get up a little closer to where we were, I think that is what it's for. I read that is the spirit it is. We're not adding 2 fire stations, spending all the money on that, but at least try to get some of the police officers to where we were. We're short. I asked Andy, he told me 3 motor officers, and I don't know how many other officers we have, but a little bit for that is so we don't cut anymore. We should get what we need to service. The lieutenant said what he needs. The fire chief, battalion chief said what he needs. We're not getting anything with the fire department. I disagree with that. Because I know, and I'm boots on the ground, I spoke to the firemen here. They have had nobody coming to calls in the city. You guys might not know that. There was a house over on Pedley that burned up. The second engineer was from Corona because our guys were on medical calls. We don't have what we need. And I understand we can't spend it all on that, but you don't know you need it until you need it. And cutting police and fire and not spending something on that, I think is just not good for this community. We're not spending that much. Only a little bit. That's just my opinion. I just want to put it out there. One last thing. All this money is going to general fund. It's just Measure R spending on it. So wherever you say it, general fund or Measure R or whatever, it's still paying for things that we're spending in the city of Norco. You could say it's coming out of the Measure R bucket or the general fund bucket, or we're backfilling the general fund bucket. We're just spending money and we're allocating where the actual expenditure revenue is coming from, expenditure item, or whatever, where the revenue is coming from. So this whole, it's not supposed to spend general fund, just is kind of a little funny to me. That's just my opinion.
Well, in the measure, in the actual ballot, it was guaranteed that it would be kept in a separate fund.
No, I agree.
This is
I
fund
agree with that.
account.
I agree with that. But it's still paying for stuff that the
understand,
general
yeah.
fund can't fund. If it could, we would need Measure R. We've never needed it.
And I also want to point out that these are recommendations, and they can be sent. So if council decides for 4 out of 5 votes that we do not need new officers, this money will be sent back to us for reallocation.
There you go.
So I'm okay with it. I just want to say that. Just point out that that's also an option of council. We are only recommending recommending how the funds will be spent. Okay, so having said that, we've made, we have 4 through 12. Does anyone want to pull any of those for discussion?
You didn't go to 2. You voted on 1. You didn't vote on 2.
Okay,
In staff, they're one, they've been lumped together as one. Staff report.
all right, well, we can do that. Does anybody want to pull number 2?
Yeah, she did originally.
Okay, so we have no,
Okay, again, I'm going to
They
pull
wanna
on,
speak.
I speak
Okay.
on number 2.
go right ahead.
And this won't even take the minute. I'm just going to reiterate exactly what I said. For number 1 is that number 2 is an additional item that we did not need based on what was attested to by the Sheriff's Department when they were here. And they said Norco is in great shape as far as overall police activity. This is a place you want to live in. It's great. I agree with committee member Capel there, but compelling, I guess it is.
That's fine.
That, yeah, we can always use more, but right now, let's take care of what our needs are, our wants are a different thing. Thank you.
Did, Teresa Edwards, did you want to speak on this one?
What's number 2?
I'm sorry, number 2 is the community service officer for $134,917. So 1 and 2 are, if you're not prepared, that's fine, but if you want to, 1 and 2 were really kind of, it was the same, it was one motion when we did it.
Correct.
Additional people.
Right.
And it's moving on without discussion. It's going to council.
Okay, so for those of you who don't have the board packet, number 4 is $500,000 for the trail system maintenance. Number 5 is $100,000 for trail fence replacement, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, there was also a $150,000 grant that was for that.
From it's development impact fees that's already in
So
that same
the
fund
total is going to be
250,
250,
total.
according to.
for that, yes.
See, I did pay attention. We do listen to you. Street projects of $1.5 million. And Chad, can you please just let the 2 projects that's for? Let the audience.
That's for Valley View Avenue between 4th and 3rd Street. It's being combined with a storm drain project that's going in at the same time. So we'll do the storm drain project first, and then the street afterwards. And the other street is River Road between Bluff and basically Sundance, the unimproved section that wasn't done when the new shopping center went in.
Okay, that's on the table. In fact, my chiropractor today said, when are you going to fix Valley View?
So one other comment I'd like to make on street projects is that the regular city capital improvement program budget already includes $6.6 million in spending for streets next year. All this current is fiscal year. So clearly, we're gonna staff is going to be very busy doing street projects this year, more than we have ever been. So.
Citywide roof projects for $805,500. Sheriff substation and city hall improvements for $295,000. Citywide AC swap cooler replacement for $230,000. Parking lot projects for $295,625. Citywide ADA assessment for $30,000, and Santa Ana River Trail project for $168,000. So those are items number 4 through 12. Does anybody want to pull any of those for discussion? No? Okay, so I think we're done here.
Okay, in terms of how
I'm sorry.
on this issue.
Public comments.
So Phil Naylor, do you want to speak for the remainder from 4 through 12?
Take advantage of it. I just want to support your recommendation.
Teresa, would you like to speak on balance?
Nice. Okay, I think I'll take it way too fast. Approving things in bulk like this makes me really nervous. I mean, it looks like you're just spending money like water. I think you need to slow down. There's certain things in here that some of us have problems with. And, you know, some of the things we don't really need. And I'm not sure why the city hall stuff is included in this. It seems like there's a lot more important things than that to worry about. I get the roofing and all that, but you got way too many things on this list. Pick a couple things for City Hall. Pick a couple things for the sheriff. Pick a couple of roofs to do. But this is a massive amount of money. $800,000 for roofs? I mean, come on, guys. This list, you need to cut this in half and work on what the really important things are on this list. There's just too much going on here, and you're going too fast. And I'm really worried about getting out of control, quite frankly. So again, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be nice, but I got some real problems with these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Dixon?
Well, I agree 100% with what Corinne said, that we are to maintain and retain what we have without adding. We don't have to add anything new. We don't even know how much money's coming in. And all of a sudden we're making this, I really and truly think that you might be disappointed with the city council and by assuming that perhaps they're going to go ahead and approve everything that you're putting forward. I truly doubt that that's going to happen. I really wish that this had been a slower process for the first 6 months, and that perhaps you had waited to really get a better idea of the funds that are coming in before the money's spent. Thank you.
Reed, did you want to speak?
I'll just sort of reiterate, I agree with Linda to some extent. I was pretty terrified the first couple of meetings when all of these projects came forward. And that's as a commissioner who already knows the money and knows how it gets there and the projects that we need. Super excited for parks, but I was like, dude, that's a lot of money. So it was a lot coming at you at one time. But again, I really appreciate the time and the questions that you guys have sent back to staff and asked for clarification. And again, I'm going to be a commissioner, not necessarily a resident. But I think the projects that they have brought forward have been very thoughtful, and the staff has done an amazing job. I had questions at the beginning, but they've done a really good job working together and not necessarily kind of looking at the amount of money that they wanted or needed or thought they were going to get. And they've really been very flexible in working on what the community actually needs. So, yeah, we don't know what council is going to do, but I think you guys have actually put in a decent amount of time in looking at these, and I hope that you always nitpick all of these things into some good detail and ask for clarifications when you have questions on it. Thank you.
Mike Thompson?
Okay, agree with everybody else, and I support your decisions here on 4 through 11. 12 concerns me a little bit, basically because I don't understand quite everything going on there with that project because of the tunnel that goes underneath Hammer and its involvement with Silver Lakes. So I'm just not quite sure about number 12. If I missed something, that's my fault, but I support 4 through 11. Did good work there. Thank you.
Norva Williams?
Good evening. I'm really proud of you guys tonight. You backed up and taken a second look at some of this stuff, and that's exactly what needs to happen. You guys were newly formed, tough situation. You just, tonight, to me, is like a major turnaround. And the thing I hope you guys will remember, when city council, and I can assure you it probably will happen with our wonderful sheriff's guys, when they turn it down, council's gonna get beat up. They're gonna get beat up mercilessly, being accused of not caring about the city, et cetera, et cetera. Where they're looking at contract issues, a whole different thing. They want it as bad as we do. But common folk don't understand how that works. So, potentially be careful there, because we can't have council beat up over what they fought for Measure R as hard as we did. So, and there's going to be circumstances and it's going to happen, but we don't want it to happen over our police department. We need more, but retain, maintain. So agree with that. The basic statement that was on the ballot, excellent to take that as a mission statement. That it says it all. That's what we got the people to vote for. So, good job tonight, you guys. I'm proud of you guys.
There are more speakers.
Okay, and so we have approved $4.4 million and change out of an estimated $6,076,000. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that when Brian gave us estimates, and those are estimates, if these projects come in under budget, the money comes back to us to reallocate. It's not, so if he said a roof was gonna cost $30,000 and it costs $25,000, we get the $5,000 back to reallocate. So it's not going to go away. And that was clarified, I think, in our second meeting. So we've had a lot of, had to have Andy and staff. They've been wonderful because we're all new and we all come from very different backgrounds. And so I think that we've worked hard to get to this point, and we're looking forward to moving forward at mid-year when we actually have more facts, when we actually have more knowledge about what it's going to bring in and how we're receiving it. So thank you all for your comments.
We'll need a motion and a second to approve items 1, 2, 4 through 12 to move on to city council.
I'm sorry. Okay. Any discussion? Tara? Sorry. Member Yates? Member Warehouse? Member Zimmerberg? Member Capelli?
Again, this is a confirmation vote because you've already acted on this before. So I just want to make sure.
Member Guy, any comments? Okay, can I have a motion to approve 1, 2, and 4 through 12? Member? Second? Okay.
Member Guy, okay. And then we'll vote.
All in favor? I'm sorry, roll call.
Member Yates?
Aye.
Member Wareham?
Nay.
Member Sandifer? Aye. Member Guy?
Aye.
Member Capelli?
Aye.
Chair Olmsted Bowen?
Aye.
With 5 voting yes, Member Wareham voting no, motion passes.
So the next
item.
let me, if I could take Madam Chair,
Okay.
discussing how we move forward to the City Council. So we know what you've pulled out, which is the FY 2019-2020 public safety cost increase. Every other item remains as is. And so there is no need to bring any of these things back now. The report will be going to the City Council for the City Council to make a final determination on these items.
And what if we have comments about the report?
Sure, you can designate the chair and vice chair, or we can provide you as a draft staff report for you to comment if you want to. Yeah, as long as it doesn't change the substance of what you've already agreed, yeah, absolutely.
It was my understanding that you were going to bring the staff report for the recommendation to the August meeting, and then it was going to go to council in September. That's what I understood when we had our agenda meetings with myself and Yvonne and you.
We can do that only because, well, the problem with that, again, if there were substantial changes to what you did tonight from the prior reports, we would have had to bring it back and to redo the report. But there are really no substantial changes to the actions that you've previously taken. And by delaying it 1 month, the issue with that is all these projects that require planning, they require design and construction, and ultimately they also need to go to the city council for approval. Certainly this will be another 2 months perhaps that is taken off of the ability to execute these contracts or these projects.
Although we did take off about 15% of what we had originally approved. So you're saying it will be similar to this without,
Right.
you're going to take that paragraph out and this will be your memo?
Yes, and we can leave that paragraph, by the way, saying this was looked at and considered, but you recommended not to proceed. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I can share the staff report with you, and you can provide comments,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
we're ready to go.
Yes, I would like us to review it before, even if it's just through emails.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that.
So when would it go to council then?
So most likely this will go to the city council, the second meeting in August. Yes,
Oh, that's
yeah.
21st September. I will be away.
If we're gonna, this is the 21st, you have a whole week, can't we get it to the city council the first meeting then, if we're gonna do it this way?
Yeah, I don't know how the turnaround is going to be on. No, I think we that is a law. No.
Okay, so that's the chair had that sense of humor, okay?
Maybe that's something we'll find out or measure out someday, right?
I'd say, yeah, it's good stuff.
I want you to redo your whole agenda for city council, stick this down. Anyway, okay, so we're done with that business item. And the next one was, Brian, were you going to give us a presentation?
Yeah, but Madam Chair, I'd like to make a comment on this as well. Staff has put to, this is a request from committee member Tara Yates regarding the providing some potential projects that could enhance the look of the city and attract economic development here in the city of Norco. And obviously, Parks and Rec staff have been working extremely hard, and they have been creative in some of the items that they have put together. However, I think it would not do it justice to have that discussion in 30 minutes. There's a lot of items that have been provided here that my suggestion, if you agree, would be to carry this item over to the next committee meeting so that you can have sufficient amount of time to dive into this and really discuss it at length.
Yeah, my presentation's only an hour long.
So,
Okay, I'm sorry.
it's up to you.
If you talk fast.
Yeah, it is. See, Corinne knows me.
No, you haven't even
I'm
seen
just
it.
trying to remember.
It's not in your agenda. No.
Brian talks long, he doesn't talk fast.
It's agenda for discussion on the agenda.
Sam, he might get it done.
Yeah.
He'll get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah, number 3.
So I do want to hear as much as we can. If it seems like there's a break that we can have and then we separate it out, but I would like to at least start the presentation.
That's your desire, Howard?
That's mine. I'm willing to hear other members' comments to have a discussion about it.
I'd like to hear him do it the whole thing. If he says he needs an hour and it's the president, I'd rather hear the whole thing than break it up. I'm gonna forget. Me personally, I'm gonna forget what he said if he's half and half. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'd rather hear it next time.
Yeah.
I feel like too, like we weren't even given the presentation, so.
Yeah, you haven't
able
even
to
seen it.
review
Right.
To,
This way I can include it in the
so
packet.
yet again, it's not,
How about we get the PowerPoint, we can look at it, and then when he gives presentation, we'll have a little information.
So I can include that presentation will be included in your next packet.
I'd like it to be sent tomorrow, because it was agendized tonight, and so it should have been included in this packet, it should have been ready, I'd like to have it sooner.
Yeah, as I said,
So that I can
Tara,
ask questions before.
yeah, it's a lot of work that has gone into this.
And I
This is
I
a
fully understand
substantial
all
amount of
that.
work by
I
staff.
just would like more time than just a couple
Well,
of
then
days.
staff would ask for 60 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
You already put it
No,
No.
I haven't put, I'm still working with economic development, public works, because it's not just one department. If that was the case, we have other things to do. We would ask for 60 days on this.
Then maybe you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I thought don't you have a presentation tonight?
Yeah, I have a presentation that covers, but there's some stuff that I would like to include a little bit more time with, especially with our economic development department.
Brian threw this together last night on his own. I have not reviewed this. The commissions haven't reviewed this. This has had no vetting, but we were trying to get something, and this is what you got just thrown together.
But we didn't actually get anything.
Right, because we just finished it last night to try to get you something. It
Yeah.
just, time didn't work out to even start
Just
this.
to take on that.
Let me say this.
Yeah,
That,
whatever you want to
excuse
do.
me. Yeah, so we will have this completed and sent out to you with your next agenda packet, and we'll have a discussion on it at the next COC meeting.
Okay, so, do I need a motion to defer this, or? Okay,
I'll move to defer it to next meeting.
Second.
second.
Okay, Member Gates? Member Worthing? Member Sanderberg? Member Guy? Member Sally?
But I have no.
Chair Olmsted Bowen? Aye. Motion passes unanimous, or excuse me, with 5 ayes, Member Yates voting no. So we'll continue this till August 28th meeting with getting a copy of the.
I also want to say that, I also want to say that right now, I mean, I don't see a problem with deferring it, because, and I agree with you that we should be doing this, but, I just want to say that, we were only supposed to have quarterly meetings at the beginning, so we've really pushed up the meetings and pushed up
That's
the
right.
projects and pushed staff to, do a lot of so I don't see a problem with waiting 30 days. I'd like to have a copy of what was produced last night, so we'll be prepared in the next meeting to address, and I'd love to see.
Just something to ask questions. For me, I feel like we've done a disservice by not being able to do it before this goes to council. Because I feel like there's, as a Measure R committee member, I wanted there to be something that, other people have quoted things that I said, which is bang for the buck. We have all of these projects that are 100% necessary, and I agree with Chad and Brian and everything they put forward. I have voted yay on all of it. I support it. We don't have anything that's of immediate impact to our residents. Insulation and roofs, although we need it, and we need to ensure that buildings are safe and protected and aren't going to deteriorate further. I appreciate that. I have, my entire career has worked in, a large department with over 50 structures that had to have all, and I get that. I don't think that we had adopted anything that supports revenue or supports economic development. I asked specifically if any of these items were going to increase participation in our programs, like where is that direct, immediate benefit to the public, except for, I'm sorry, I should say the trails, because I'm going to use the trails, so I'm very excited about that. Trails and the fencing that we did do. But I'm sad that we're not in this first round of items that are going to go to council, be able to include, potentially be able to vote to include any items similar to that. I have certainly been requesting it. It's for several meetings, so I'm disappointed in that. I understand if we can't do it, tonight, and I'll just have to wait until the next meeting, and then we'll, potentially be able to, at that meeting, be able to address it from there.
And there's nothing in our rules that say we can't look at it next meeting and approve it and send it to council the next month. So we're not stuck on a time frame. I mean, especially with capital projects that can, are appropriated as they're approved. They're not appropriated always at the budget period. So I understand what you're saying, and I would say if we have some projects we want to move forward, we can move them forward.
It's just disappointing that it's not in the first bit, because this is the first bit that all of the residents are going to see. There's going to be publicity of these items, you're going to have press releases, and I was hoping for something like that. Those are the people who are talking to me. Those are the items that they're most interested in. Public safety and the condition of the facilities that they use and what they see. So, yes, I can't say that I am disappointed we can't put it in the first round. I would like to make sure that, there's some reference to the fact that the committee is looking at that for the future, so that the public does know that we intend to look at those towards the future, so that, they understand that that's our next phase where we're looking at. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that message will be out, and you'll have a chance to take a look at it. I'm not going to say that you're going to have an agreement on what needs to be done, but
To add to that is some of the items when you start looking at it philosophically. Really, from a funding standpoint, that falls in this committee, but a lot of it falls in EDAC. And some of it falls into Parks and Recreation, and some in Streets, because all of that is sort of a package that we wrap up. And so when you start looking at that, it almost would be better, honestly, to engage everyone in that discussion, and whether that would be via a workshop or whatever, because the reality is it's something that we're looking at to create sustainability, because those things have all been talked about too. What Measure R, infrastructure, and those things are about sustainability. So the reality is that from the funding standpoint, yeah, but those other commissions haven't had a chance, other than a lot of the stuff I have looked at is stuff that they brought up, but we have never really tied the ribbon around all of those people's, all of the connections. So what I'm trying to do is pull things that EDAC has talked about, things that Streets and Trails, Parks and Rec has talked about, and so but I haven't really showed them anything. So that's kind of one of the dilemmas. But and a lot of this is what if. And in fact, one of our slides would start off as what if, because it's really about visibility. And one of the things we said is please don't get hooked up on the economic analysis, because there is none. Okay, but we can see what the potential is, and we have not done what I would call architectural engineering estimates on all of this. I have ideas, but it's not a $2 million type of endeavor. It's a long-term endeavor, and that's probably part of my messaging when I talk to you again. And this is a long-term endeavor, which includes the other commissions and eventually City Council.
So I'm confused then. Sorry, I'm easily confused. I thought the stuff you brought to us was stuff that came from the other commissions.
It is.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it wasn't.
Economic impact stuff.
Yeah, this is a separate request.
And Member Gates is trying to say, let's do things that will make our city look good. People will want to come here and spend money, and then we have more Measure R money.
I agree.
So that's a good goal, and so that's what we want to look at.
Sure. Okay. Well,
Okay, so now we can
have this to
have,
you.
so we deferred that. Now we have public
I
comments.
think you need something.
Any additional?
Bill Naylor.
Oh, Bill. Don't give us a.
When I was in college, I had to take a
This
speech
is something
class,
that
and I always hated like that to have to get up in front of people. What am I doing all now? Is getting up in front of people and talking. And I'll be honest with you, I showed services, I taught 10 rows. But I want you guys to think long-term, and I really appreciate some of your comments on the section on the economic development section. I really think it's great. I'm going to be making this presentation also to Streets and Trails and probably to City Council. But I'm going to kind of just, you guys are getting the first ones to hear this, and I'm sure Andy and them are going to say, oh no, not Phil. But you guys,
His time is
your
up.
recommendation is...
You're in Parks and Recs now.
Now I'm Parks and Recreation. As of this month, I was Streets and Trails for 4 years before. But, so I do have a little bit of background. But what I would like you guys to think about, and you're making some major expenditures on trail renovation, new trails, all that kind of stuff. Or not new trails, but new replacement fencing, all that kind of stuff. In the 4 years, 5 years that I've been involved with this, I know I've reported a number of issues to the staff about trail issues that people are encroaching into the trail, or illegal parking, unsafe conditions, things like this. Some get addressed, some don't. I get word that some of it's staff is being told, well, we don't want to create issues with the public. We don't want people coming back and upset with things. But if we're going to spend well over $500,000 in fixing up our trails this coming year, I would like to see us start taking the bull by the horns, and as these improvements get done, that we empower code enforcement or other staff to be able to go out and start talking and correcting issues as we go along. I would hate to see us spend this kind of money and then 2 or 3 years later come back and say, it looks like we didn't do anything. And I'll take an example. We had to do the same thing on 3rd Street when we replaced 3rd Street, put in new trail fencing and such like that. A couple of years ago, we had to go back in and say, hey, the residents along there weren't taking care of the trail, and the weeds were getting up as high as the fence again. And we're doing some of that problem again on California. So we really need to start empowering our code enforcement or other staff to go out and push the issue with the property owner that they are responsible for the area in front of their property up to the street curb and eliminating the weeds and that type of stuff. They're not responsible for the fence and they're not responsible for the DG, but they are responsible to keep the area clean. And I think we need to start empowering staff to force that so we don't lose our investment that this committee's putting in. Thank you.
Anyone else? Teresa?
Here I am. This is the last time. Okay. So, like I said, I'm with the Historic Preservation Commission. I really respect Corinne because she's just awesome. But I don't know who came to talk to you about your problems, but nobody's come to talk to us about ours. The other commissions apparently are giving input to what they need. And we have been giving input to what we need. And we don't get any attention at all. The Historic Preservation Commission is on the bottom of the totem pole. I think it has been for a long time, and that needs to change because I'll tell you why. That is a destination place for tourists and visitors. I think the city is making a big mistake not thinking about the tourism and the visitors that come to this town. There's like 200,000 people go to Silver Lakes. They should be going through there. We should be selling museum tickets and T-shirts and all kinds of stuff about our history. And they're driving right past our place. But you know, nobody pays any attention to us. We have been begging for things over there. We have visitors that come in, we have staff, we have all kinds of people come by. We're encouraging it with the Facebook, social media. But you know what? We've been begging for a bathroom that works. Our toilet doesn't work. We have 3 seniors that are there. They come every week. They put their heart and soul into the city, and they've got to reach down next to the floor to turn the water on to fill up the toilet tank so that they can use the bathroom so that the toilet will flush, and then they have to reach down and turn the water off so it doesn't flood. We've been asking to get this done for months, okay? I'm not naming any names. The other thing with the bathroom is the door doesn't even close. The door doesn't close. You know how it gets stuck halfway in the jam and you get looking for privacy? Okay? Now, if you're going to spend $175,000 on the parking lot in Riley's gym, which is fine with me, it's cool, can we get a toilet, please? Because this place, we are building this place for visitors and for prestige, to promote our heritage. And it is so embarrassing when people come in and we can't tell, that we got new facilities for you. So we really, really want to be heard. I really appreciate everybody's job that they're trying to do. But don't forget about us. And, in the video that I watched from the last meeting, somebody was saying that it comes down to capital versus maintenance on the decisions that are made for the public facilities and stuff like that. Well, I would like to know what category you would put those three seniors in. Are they capital or maintenance categories? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Two more cards. Okay. Items for future, so we have the economic development, and Teresa, you brought up some good economic development ideas. Any other items? Okay.
I have a question. What is the timetable for the recommendations of this committee to be presented to City Council?
I stated that we will be taking that to the City Council at their second August meeting. That will be August 21st.
21st.
Yeah. And again, I would encourage all of you to be there because this will be your recommendation moving forward to the City Council.
And you get 3 minutes.
If you need to speak in support of that, yeah, that's right.
And so,
Prepared.
when, how many days in advance do you post the agenda items, or when will you have to have the staff report done, or will you send us an email, please?
Yeah, so the staff report,
staff report
yeah, as I previously stated, I'm going to send it to you as soon as possible so that you can.
Just adding the due date so that we'll know when to get it back to you to have it.
Yeah, I will do that. Yeah.
Okay. We're done. 7:50.